Thank you for listening to the Political Risk Podcast, where geopolitics and insurance meet. Welcome to the latest episode. I'm your host, David Benyon, and I'm joined by Pamela Thomson-Hall, Head of International and Head of Risk and Broking International at Willis Towers Watson. Based in Dubai and a lawyer by background, Pamela is the CEO for all markets around the globe outside of North America and Western Europe. For our conversation, Pamela provides a broker perspective on crisis management in response to sudden geopolitical shocks, including a CEO's guidebook, as well as other tools such as scenario analysis for navigating geopolitical crises. We also discuss developments with regard to Russia-Ukraine and aviation insurance business, as well as her role responsible for the oversight and strategy for business in the 60-plus countries across the 4 diverse regions that comprise Willis Towers Watson International. That's Asia, Australasia, Latin America, Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa. Okay, that's enough for me. Let's get into the conversation. Well, Pamela, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me again.
We obviously met about a year ago in Dubai at a big conference, and you were delivering a keynote speech at that DWIC event. And it was actually rather on topic to this podcast in terms of the topicality.
That's right. I mean, it was on topic at the time. And I said at the time, I think when I wrote it, it changed as I was writing it because the world changes so quickly. And I experienced the same thing prepping for this today, that, what I might have said last week might be different to what I say this week.
But yeah, I suppose it is in the nature of the subject, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's start off by talking about your role at Willis.
Thank you. I have the real privilege of leading our what we call international geography at Willis. Our international tag covers everything outside of North America and mature Western Europe. By that I mean, big countries like Italy, Spain, GB, obviously. What does that mean? That means that I am responsible for Latin America, including Central America. I'm responsible for a catchily named region called CEMEA, which includes Central Eastern Europe, Middle East, Africa, also the region of Asia, and also the region of Pacific. So together, that's what we call our international geography. Within that, I have specific P&L accountability for the risk and broking business. So the Willis business, the insurance side of our global business. And it is truly a privilege. It is a very diverse, engaging, energetic world with never a dull moment.
I'll be honest, I don't think I get enough brokers on the podcast. I tend to feature more underwriters more often. So it's lovely to have you on in that regard as well.
Thank you.
Well, with so many territories and so many lines of business, how does your role connect with this big concept of geopolitical risk across different lines of insurance business?
I've worked in the international space since 2006. And I have to say the concept of geopolitical risk is something that I just live with every day, as do many of my colleagues who run these regions. We have navigated through some very interesting geopolitical challenges, changes, and evolving situations. But it has, in the last 3 years or so, really ramped up in terms of pace and change that we have seen, not least last year, which was called the year of great elections, where we saw, for example, Latin America move from blue to red. Before that, we'd been absolutely used to challenges of inflation and devaluation as a constant to manage. We've seen in our world in that catchily named CEMEA region, where we had Russia and Ukraine, we've seen the Putin march across the border into Ukraine with the fallout that caused. We have a number of businesses across the Middle East, and I myself am now based in Dubai with a view to refreshing our brand and ensuring our business evolves at the pace of the development of the Middle East at the moment. So we have a number of businesses in the Middle East. We also have a terrific and relatively newly acquired business in Israel. So when the events in October at the music festival occurred, we were managing colleagues in the Middle East as well as Israel, and the colleague attention to communications that was required fell, on our shoulders, my leaders' shoulders. We are a large broker in China, one of the largest and oldest, and we're also in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And as we know, there is often discussion about China's aspirations with regard to those two other countries. And then we have the smaller geopolitical tensions within countries where we have challenges caused by changes of government that posed risks to clients' projects and the sustainability of their own businesses. And that has a knock-on effect to the work that we do for clients and can cause great volatility in terms of decision making by those clients. So I think as a business in those wonderful emerging markets and some mature markets such as Australia, New Zealand and South Africa, as a broker in those businesses, we manage our own challenges with geopolitical risks every day. I would say that in turn really enables us to understand the challenges a client's facing.
Yeah. Going back to when I listened to your keynote a year ago, and that was in Dubai, Russia-Ukraine was a big focus of that in terms of crisis management. And you referenced just a moment ago also the October attacks in 2023 in Israel. And then you say all the kind of elections that were a big focus of 2024 as well. It's constantly changing, isn't it? You said yourself before, you're having to rewrite scripts.
Yeah.
What have you learned about responding to sudden shocks of the type that we talk about on this podcast, geopolitical risk shocks, whether that's for your own business in the way you approach things and also in the way that your clients do things that's shaping those client conversations?
Yeah, I mean, you're right to say that it shapes our client conversations. Our own experiences 100% shape our conversations with our clients, and it enables us to be, I think, better advisors to having lived through experiences ourselves and learn for ourselves how we would do things differently and how to prepare for the future. So to have that roadmap of preparedness and the need to be constantly horizon scanning is probably the first thing we've learned. So we do not want to be surprised again like we were with Russia. But when you are horizon scanning, you might be able to predict some of the things that could happen, but how you would respond to them could take many different forms depending on how the rest of the world reacts. So I'm thinking, for example, if there isn't sanctions that fall on a particular country should an event occur, would require a different reaction to say if there weren't sanctions. So not only do we constantly horizon scan and are asked by our board what we think, we're asked by our leaders how we would respond, we're asked about the implications of an event occurring both from a people, risk and financial perspective. So not only do we do that horizon scanning, but we actually proactively scenario model what we would do to ensure business continuity or to respond to an event such as an event that stops us trading, such as sanctions. So we have those plans constantly being refreshed. And I'm currently working on a refresh of a number of plans that will be presented to our board, who require us to show that we are healthy business leaders in whom they can trust to look after the business.
I'd love to be in the room when some of those new scenario ideas are tabled, when they're put to the board. It must be fascinating.
We have a great team of enterprise risk management colleagues who look at this daily for us. And then we are ready to go. And I can't pretend that we would have every scenario planned depending on what happens, because you can never predict everything. But we certainly are practiced at thinking in an agile and problem-solving way to respond should something occur. I thank Russia for that, if I'm honest with you. That required us to act really quickly, but now we have a blueprint for how we can act in the future. And so that is great. And we share that with clients, we share that experience with clients. And we've also learned about the importance of having a diversified business, because you have what I often call the hamster wheel of business. Some countries are thriving because they are relatively calm, others then have hiccups as changes occur or crises evolve. And to smooth the ups and downs. The importance of having either diversified business footprint or business within a business is critically important. So, I'd say that having lived and breathed our own challenges, I think we're way better placed as advisors to our own clients in this space today than we were even, say, 3 years ago.
We've already talked about it, but how would you say client demands have evolved in the past few years, since Russia-Ukraine kicked off in 2022?
Geopolitical risks are now on the client's agenda as a discussion point. They're tangible. They've, on the whole, experienced some form of geopolitical uncertainty. And our own political risk survey from this year that we did with Oxford Analytica did highlight that 74% of respondents said that political risk was in their top 5 on their ERM register. And they are proactively, like we do, where we scenario plan and we horizon scan, they are proactively monitoring political risks. And that has increased in terms of the percentage that we're doing it in 2022, which was at 64% to 89% now in 2025. So I would say clients are smarter, they're more interested in the subject, they are very keen to effectively use various markets, insurance markets such as political risk insurance and trade credit markets to protect against the risks that they are being more consistently exposed to or at threat of.
Those are great reports. I would agree. I had Sam as a previous guest on the podcast, and I always enjoy reading them when they come out. So let's delve into one particular thing that I heard about, which is the CEO's guidebook. So firstly, what is it and how does it relate to managing geopolitical risks?
I guess it's a summary of lessons learned and what to do in terms of responding to a geopolitical situation. And you could think of the Russia situation as an example. How would you, as a leader, top leader, and this can apply to, a segment leader or a divisional leader also, how would you, as a top leader, look to manage in the moment? And what are the key lessons that you would learn if you got it wrong? So what should you do in the future to get it right? And there are a few things. So the first is pace and agility are critical. So in the moment of crises, there's no time to faff around working out what to do. You need to know who your core team is. You need to know who the experts are for that particular issue. You need to know who to turn to. So cyber attack, your cyber insurers, your malware negotiators. Pace and agility are critical. The second is you need strict and tight governance. It's not a moment for democracy. There isn't time to mull over a problem, take consultative advice from many of your team players who might have a different view, and then sit around a table, cogitate, and come up with an answer. You need, in the moment of crisis, to know who's in the team, what their roles are, what they're going to do, how you're going to identify the interdependencies, how the decision making is going to occur, and get that in place immediately. Third, communicate, communicate, communicate. I would say this is golden rule of business life in any event, but making sure that the communication occurs promptly, that the classic why, why is it that this is happening? What is it that is going to happen? And how is it going to happen? The classic 3 pillars of good, clear, concise, and consistent communication must occur actually quite quickly, because people look to leaders immediately to say, what are we doing about this? And leaders get the weirdest questions in a time of crisis from the strangest of places, often unexpectedly. So to have a team on the communications activity who know that they have to be ready to answer the weirdest of questions, to put people's minds at rest, be it clients or colleagues or markets or sometimes the press, that is critical. A void breeds mistrust. So avoid voids at all costs. Trust your instincts. So often leaders are great leaders because they have great instincts, and it's an often underplayed skill. But because pace and agility are necessary and decisions being taken fast and often in the moment, and critical decisions, the instinctive nature of a good leader should kick in, and CEO level leaders should not try to second guess themselves where they've got everything else in play with a great team around them. Decision making often needs to be instinctive in that moment of crises. And then I alluded to the team. People should surround themselves at all times anyway by team players who are always better than them so that they can help make the best decisions. Leveraging that team, both in terms of bandwidth and expertise, is absolutely necessary. And then don't forget to manage your stakeholders, because the stakeholders in a normal BAU situation, so a normal running of a business situation, are very well known. That people are in routines of reporting. They know that they have quarterly this or monthly that, or the need to talk to someone on the occurrence of a certain event. But in a crisis, in an unexpected scenario, the stakeholders are often different. So pausing momentarily to understand who they might be is very important. And then the managing of the messaging towards those stakeholders has to be within the body of work. So I'm thinking, for example, your board will be interested in what's going on in a crisis. There might be counterparties to supplier contract activities that you need to deal with. Often there'd be a press touch point. And colleagues are fabulous because they are people, and people do behave in strange ways in a crisis. So never forget the need to be thinking about, how is this landing with my team, either because of their personal situation. I talked about us having a business in Israel, as well as, many colleagues across the Middle East. How are colleagues feeling? Are they feeling personally threatened? What do we do to reassure them that their health and safety is critically important? So managing stakeholders that could be different to the norm. And that probably takes me to my final point, which would be, make sure you are alive to the cultural nuances. So attend to those cultural nuances. If you're dealing with a situation in Israel and you're not Jewish or Israeli, make sure that you have someone that you can soundboard the communications off so that you are culturally sensitive. You're not missing something that needs to be said or saying the wrong thing. I have learned that over the years in my work across our international footprint. Sometimes in a crisis, a large global multinational can put out a message which is deeply culturally insensitive, but comes from the right place. It doesn't attend to the cultural nuances.
So much good stuff in there. There's so many things. I was just nodding to myself as you were saying it just then, reminding me of a few different anecdotes over the years. The cultural sensitivity side of it reminds me of, I can't remember who said it, but a while ago I was having a cyber conversation, a different sort of example, but talking about the threat environment. And for something like cyber, everyone focuses on the technology. So I love this little anecdote. You never get massive amounts of cyber attacks on Orthodox Christmas, because all of the hackers are in sort of parts of Russia and they're with their families.
Wow, that is a statistic I didn't know.
You reminded me as well of this notion that, crisis management doesn't start when a crisis happens, is it? It starts a long time before, because you want to have that folder, whether it's digital or on the desk. And you said to yourself about which team you'd need to have in place.
Absolutely.
And that can't happen at the time if you want to be agile, like you said, and quick to respond.
Yeah, it's about preparedness, and it does build resilience. So those drills of war games where you practice what happens are really, really important. And I can tell you, having done one very recently at our airport risk conference as part of a team with airport operators, it's really nerve-wracking when you're in that moment and the information's flowing fast and changing, and you have to work as a team when you haven't actually been working as a team regularly previously. And so the practice is important.
Have you ever watched that Tom Hanks movie, Captain Phillips?
Yes. I was thinking about that the other day as I was coming into land.
So many years ago, because I have my role as a Navy reservist, and there's a brief moment in that movie when he speaks to a UK maritime trade operations operator at the other end of a phone. So I've done that. It wasn't me, by the way, but I've done that role when I was living out in Dubai. And it's a bit like answering a 999 call. And the reason why I say it is that we would have all sorts of data at our fingertips. And the whole point of that is so you don't need to ask 20 questions. Ideally, you would know the number of crew, the nationalities, all sorts of information about the vessel that captain is calling from, so you would know
Yeah.
it's freeboard, that's the distance to the sea and the deck. All those kind of bits of information that are really important, speed, his position, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to have to ask that in a crisis. You really want to ask what's going on outside the window right now.
Yeah.
If you don't have the good script in place, but also all of that data at your fingertips, then you could waste so much time. You really want to find out quickly, as you said, communicate both ways, find out what you need to and disseminate what you need.
That's a really good analogy.
Let's switch tack and for the insurance industry, what role do you think the sector can play in stabilizing and protecting businesses against, again, catch-all term, but geopolitical volatility?
I think it has a critically important role to play. And I do wish as an industry we were better at publicising how brilliant our industry is in helping people in times of crisis. I think there are three things in particular that make insurance a strategic enabler to ensure resilience. The first is the obvious one, it's a financial backstop. It provides liquidity and certainty to allow businesses to maintain operations and continue with investor confidence during crises. And that obviously does drive greater economic resilience. And that's through tools like government-backed reinsurance pools or climate-related alternative risk transfer solutions. So that's the obvious one. But the sector also enables, through risk intelligence and advisory services, to enable clients and industry to properly scenario model and really imagine the unpredictable so that they can build their own resilience strategies into their boardroom discussions, their operational activities, and not just leave it sitting in the risk management function, which was the way of old. So ours and our competitors do all sorts of things in that space, including Willis's own geopolitical risk index that we publish. And then I think the third sort of key thing that we do, and we talk about this a lot as an industry, is we are constantly innovating for better risk transfer solutions, combined facility solutions or parametric products, so that we can continuously look to close protection gaps and make sure that claims payments are expedited. So we do have fabulous stuff going on that we do constantly to enable the world to keep going during a crisis and to sustain business and build resilience into our clients every day.
So it sounds like you believe the industry does this role very well already. Is there anything that you think you'd want to push things in a certain direction where the industry could be doing either more of the same or do things better?
Yeah, and I go back to this point about I think we should publicise what we do more in terms of what we do for good. Instead of talking about products, we should talk about, the holistic why of why is our industry such a brilliant industry. But there is always room for improvement and we're constantly evolving. Contract certainty is a must. That phrase that came out of 9/11 is still something we need to constantly evolve. As products evolve, we need to make sure that clients really understand that they A, have cover, and B, what that cover is, and that it will respond in the moment. So that needs to continuously improve. It improves the overall reputation of the industry, but it gives confidence to clients in the products that they're purchasing and the cover that they're getting. But innovation generally is something that the industry is chasing. We're not known to be natural innovators as an industry. In fact, some would say we're very slow to change. And maybe in some spaces we could be seen as early adopters, but probably even a little bit behind that. We have a wealth of data and everyone is looking to use this better for client benefit, trading benefits, and to enable us to develop and shape new products. That capturing of data and analysing and using it to better effect is critical. We ourselves are investing heavily in that space and doing some great stuff. And I think that the industry as a whole is on the verge of a generational shift. And I hope that with our new colleagues from younger generations and their ways of working that are very AI centered. I look at my own son who's 22 leaving university, and he's deeply comfortable with AI generated or centered technology, and the use of it is norm for him. With those younger generations coming through into the industry, the ways of working will be disrupted, and we will hopefully be able to deliver quicker, faster, better client-focused outcomes.
We began the conversation by talking about Russia-Ukraine and crisis management. We also talked about aviation a bit. So looking at Russia-Ukraine again, the kind of obvious big news item in recent months has been the English High Court judgment about the aircraft lessors, the losses falling within whole war coverage. Obviously, This has been going on for some time. Yeah, just a quick word on this. What do you foresee happening next?
Well, firstly, it gives clarity, and I think it just helps speed things up, so provides momentum. Clarity is a great thing for clients. We talked about contract certainty earlier. It certainly helps with policy interpretation and unlocks other settlements. The reality is that in the moment, court suit happens and you have the judgment, there were already settlements well underway in parallel with the court hearing and prior to the judgment. But the whole war market had therefore already been pricing in the likely outcome. So I think in the short term, the ruling will absolutely open a wave of settlements, which is great. And that's as lessors and insurers seek to avoid further legal costs and any reputational damage. I think in the medium term, the High Court refused insurers permission to appeal as part of the ruling, but they can go to the Court of Appeal and seek leave to appeal. So let's see if that occurs and if it's granted. But in the meantime, the other consideration is the impact on the reinsurance market. And the ruling was absolutely a hot topic of conversation at Monte Carlo this year. The reality is that insurers and reinsurers had never envisaged such a volume of aircraft being made inaccessible to their owners in such a manner. We've seen it previously with maybe attacks at airports, but not in this way. At this moment in time, wordings haven't changed, and no party seems to want an alteration to undermine their claims or courtrooms' ambitions. But since the event occurred, insurers increased pricing considerably, and that has more recently drawn new insurers and additional capacity into this sector, such that we are now seeing rating reductions. So there's also been some acute focus on aggregates that remains, and it has absolutely contributed to the ongoing conversations about the need for resilience and capital efficiency. So quite a, as we say, broad topic of conversation and of interest to that particular market.
I did have an aviation war CEO of an NGA recently on the podcast, Bruce Carman from Hive. And we talked about this then, and Bruce called it quite a black swan-like situation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, nevertheless, I think insurers will want to apply some lessons from it that they can use elsewhere for other locations or scenarios. I think China, Taiwan is the obvious one.
Yeah.
What do you think the case means for coverage and insurability going forward, particularly things like aggregate limits, confiscations of limits, and changes in wording?
Well, I think these things are all going to be more under the microscope now than ever. And that ultimately does give clients greater contract certainty. It is, however, at the potential cost of limited coverage and higher premium costs. So we are still observing a softening in the whole war market. And I think in the absence of another significant event, we do anticipate this continuing. And we still see a well-capitalized market despite the losses, with several insurers renewing their treaties early to sustain that capacity.
So I believe that Willis Towers Watson recently signed a memorandum of understanding with Ukrainian airports. So does that relate to this? Just tell us a bit more about that and what that represents for the insurability of that particular type of region of airspace when it reopens.
I mean, this is something I feel so passionate about and proud of that we're able to do as a sector and as a company in particular, because as you know, our market leading aviation practice has been actively and publicly supporting the Ukrainian aviation industry since day one of the war. I remember back in 2022 when we were so proud to welcome leaders from Kyiv-Sikorsky International Airport to our airport risk community event that we hold every year. That particular year, it was in Lisbon. And Vladimir Kudok, the CEO of the airport, spoke with such passion about the steps that they were taking at the time to rebuild resilience and recovery strategies during wartime. There was not a dry eye in the entire conference hall. And so since that day, which seems so long ago now, we have been working for the benefit of the Ukrainian people in the aviation industry. And in our latest collaboration, we've partnered with 3 prominent airports and the Ukrainian state air traffic services to prepare for the resumption of operational control when conditions allow. So we will be working again across the market to re-educate, bring to the fore for carriers the risk management and mitigation work that has been completed on the ground, and to prepare for that reinsurance coverage to be resumed so that we are ready to go on day one that the airspace opens and not have to, as we talked about before, scramble around to work out what to do. That makes me immensely proud of our sector, immensely proud of our team, the aviation team, immensely grateful to the support of the carriers who have participated in that work so far. And a big shout out to my own colleagues in Ukraine and Kyiv who are tirelessly working to support their clients through this period in the hope that this is an event that we can soon trigger and get the skies back open and the planes flying again.
I think we all wish that would happen sooner rather than later, yeah.
Yeah.
Pamela, thank you so much. It's been a really eye-opening conversation and quite wide-ranging too. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Dave. So did I. Great to speak to you again. I love your podcast. So looking forward to listening to many more to come.
Okay, that's all for now. I've been your host, David Benyon, and I'd like to thank my great guest, Pamela Thomson-Hall from Willis. Please tune in next time for more new episodes and top guests from the worlds of specialty insurance and geopolitical risk. Production was by Peter McGill. Lawrence Durkin made the music.